Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I am here with the networker extraordinaire, Robin Mansell, for week number two. I hope you enjoyed week number one. This week, we get an opportunity to talk about effective communication. Hey, Robin, how are you?
I'm fantastic and excited about week two because this is my favorite subject.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. We have we're going to go through like our normal process. We'll have a few bullet points and have you wax eloquently about your experiences and your take on certain things as it relates to effective communication.
Hmm.
As usual, I just gave an introduction. Here's some things to remember. This is not a structured, formal, stodgy class. This is Robin really giving her years of experience from the standpoint of she's been a 30-year entrepreneur, and as she would say, haven't clocked in over 30 years. And how has she done that? So, what are the things that we can take away? What are the real juicy nuggets that we can take away from her 30 years of experience that allows us to go forward and be very successful? You know the community rules, and as it relates to our school, how you can get help and support by just sending an email or DMing. All right. Let's talk a little bit about active listening, Robin, and the significance for you over the years of being an active listener and what that means. What does active listening even mean to you?
Active listening means that you are really paying attention to what's being said, that you're not waiting for your opportunity to respond. So all eyes, all ears are focused in on the person and what they're saying, and you are taking a very honest and authentic role in hearing what they're saying, or at least what you understand from what they're saying. You have to go a little deeper into it, but it means that you're really clearly, without the intention of making your point, actively listening to that person.
Okay. Okay. And so from the standpoint of just the physical, how are you, how do you, is it eye contact, is it body language, is it, what are some of the techniques that you use to really let people know that you are actively listening?
So there's two types of situations you may be in for active listening, and you could be in person, and then you could also be by phone. And it's just as important by phone as it is in person. So if you're in person, then that means that you're making eye contact with the person. You might be nodding your head in agreement. You could you could basically be saying, asking them a question to make sure that you understood what it is that they said. You could mirror back
Mm-hmm.
what they're saying. But the biggest part of it is that you are asking for clarity to make sure that you're both on the same page. Now, everything that I said other than the eye contact, you would be doing, they apply to both in person and on the phone. If you're on phone, you might be listening to tone. What is their tone or their inflection when they're saying something, because you can't see them. So that's where it's even more important that you're actually listening to what they're saying. And so the reason active listening is so important is because it's your opportunity to get clarity on what is being said. And so I have something I learned years ago is you want to make sure that you're seeing the same color blue,
Right.
because there's tons of shades of blue. So am I seeing powder blue and you're speaking dark blue? Those are not the same blue. We're not on the same page.
So in that process, I would imagine the next bullet talks about asking thoughtful questions. And if you are, it seems as if you are engaged and you are actively listening and you're interested, you would ask, it would lead to asking some thoughtful type of questions, some insightful questions. What's the impact of that?
The the best question you can ask someone is, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by you? I heard you say. So you're saying, I heard you say.
Mm-hmm.
That's saying this is what I took in. Are you saying, then you repeat it to make sure that you understood. I think that's a huge part of what's missing in communication with people, is that you think you understand what they're saying, but you never took the time to repeat or to ask more questions to make sure you understand what they're saying, because everybody's not on the same page. So that requires you to ask them, well, let me ask you a question, or may I ask you a question? Are you saying, and then you rephrase it, and then that way the person can say whether or not that what you heard is what they said.
Okay. Okay. And that what that allows you to do is, like you said, be on the same page, but it also allows them to know that you are truly listening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, some people don't like that style of questioning. I do it for clarity. Some people do it, some people feel like it's interrogating,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's actually beneficial for you to really truly understand the person, because again, everybody is not everybody doesn't see things the same way. So if you use words um, in a particular way, but I don't relate to those words in that same way, we're not gonna have an effective communication. So it's so important that you really hear what they're saying, and if you have any doubt that you're not sure, then the best thing to do is to just ask questions. But if you say, I want to make sure I understand, I guess that would come in with the empathy and validation. I want to make sure I understood what you're saying, or I want to make sure that I'm clear, because I don't want to misunderstand what you're saying. I want to make sure that I'm 100% clear. And that makes the person feel like you really are interested in this conversation.
And validating them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is it to have just almost like tunnel vision and no distractions when you are dealing with in that type of scenario?
Because it's just real easy to get distracted. It's very easy. Like, and if you get distracted during this conversation, especially depending on the level of importance, and all the conversations typically are or have their level of importance. But if you get distracted, that takes away from. It's like it takes you right off track. And I remember reading the Highway Patrol said the number one cause of accidents is somebody swerving into someone else's lane. Now,
Really?
that's the number one cause of accidents is someone swerving into someone else's lane, which means,
You're not looking.
not
You're
paying
just
attention.
not paying attention.
Not paying attention. You're just, and probably was distracted by something.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So
Exactly.
let's think about that in a conversation. Somebody's having an important conversation with you, and you get for whatever reason. I have a friend who does this all the time. That we could be talking about something, and then it's almost like, oh my God, there's a bird. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, what? It drives me nuts. And I think that this is a perfect example. I think like where people want you to adjust to their personality, and I think that you should learn how to control yourself in those types of conversations. If those conversations are important to you. Now, if they're not important to you, then just keep chasing that bird. But I think in business, it's very important that you get to know the people that you're doing business with and getting to know what's important to them and giving them that, because it's a form of respect also.
Right. Exactly. I was just thinking that it is truly a form of respect, and I think that it is appropriate validation from the standpoint of I'm validating this conversational interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and that is um, that is beneficial and useful and important to each party,
Yep,
basically.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Conversations that connect, building rapport. So, one of the things that I have great admiration for you is I've been in environments in which we didn't know anyone, and you were able to build instant rapport. Talk a little
Mm-hmm.
bit about that.
I learned about building rapport. I didn't know that's what it was. I think I brought this up before from my mother, watching how my mother interacted with people.
Hmm.
But then on a professional level, when I first started selling insurance, that's one of the very first things they tell you, because back in the day, we used to go to people's homes to sell insurance. I don't know if people still do that because there's so much things done online, but we used to go to people's homes. And so the very first thing they told us was to build rapport.
Right.
And building rapport means you take a look at the area, you take a look at their home, and you see what's important to them. Like if they have pets, if they, maybe even you see they have collectibles. You're building that rapport building is for them, and then you get the benefit of it because you want to make them feel comfortable. And my mother told me, I'll never forget, she said, when you go into a home, if it's a husband and a wife, she said, make sure that you give that wife equally as much attention, even if, because, usually it's the man is the head of the house and, or they're giving the attention to him. But she told me a story about how we lived in LA and a man came by going to sell them a water system. And she said the whole time he was there, he never looked at her one time. He never looked her way. And so she said he came back, I think, for the second appointment. And when she opened the door, he asked for, my dad, which was her husband. He was totally not acknowledging my mother. And I remember my mom saying she slammed the door in his face and said, nope, he's not here and we don't want it.
It sounds like.
Yeah, sounds like my mom, right?
Yeah.
But that was a thing that she taught me early on, not even knowing that I would be in a position in sales to use that. But she told me that before I started sales. She goes, you pay attention to the person that's there, because you don't know who's in the position of not even so much of power, but that the husband may go back to his wife and say, hey, what do you think about this? And he may not, the decision for the household may be dependent upon her voice just as much as his.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, as you are building rapport, how does open-ended questions and things of that nature play into that?
So open-ended questions mean that the client, potential client, uh, has the opportunity to go into detail,
Hmm.
to expand, rather than you asking them a question that they can just answer by saying yes or no. You'd ask them something like, well, how would this buying decision make a difference in your life?
Right.
They can't answer that with yes or no. They gotta be able to give you some more insight into what it actually means to them. So when you're unsure, um, that's when you can ask those type. You should ask a lot of those questions anyway, because then you'll get to find out what's important to them, and that's the piece that I think a lot of salespeople miss, is that it isn't about you, it's about them. What do they want?
Right. Right. And so open-ended questions allow you to continue to gather information.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Very, very important. Probably one of the most important tools in building rapport, building relationship, would be those open-ended questions.
Hmm. Okay. And so I heard someone say when you ask closed-ended questions, you close off the conversation, basically.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's a good way to look at it. People like sharing. Most people like sharing or talking about themselves. So it would behoove you to give them that opportunity, because people can tell when you're genuinely interested. It's like getting a telemarketer that calls you on the phone. How many of them sound like they're reading from a script? And
Exactly.
I'm not buying from you just because of that. That's enough right there for me not to buy from you.
Yep. That's absolutely right. So, in which you led with, you talked about the script and all, the active engagement, and
Mm-hmm.
really active engagement around. I want to just tie storytelling into this, and reciprocity. But first, storytelling and active engagement. How does storytelling play a role in showing active engagement? How have you used storytelling?
To get people to relate to a situation, you typically can tell. Usually, if you're going to tell a story, it's something that you were involved in yourself,
Hmm.
or you can recall from somewhere. Someone in your family passed a story. I mean, these stories. I had a mentor once that said, stories sell. What did he say? I forget how it goes. But anyway, they would tell you all the time, the stories tell.
Right.
Like, you you get people to engage. People like stories. That's why they watch things like that on TV. They want to feel like they're part of it, or they can relate to what's being told, or they can recall a situation that they were in just like that.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so, talk a little bit. Have you experienced a lot of reciprocity, and how do you do that? How does that mean you give something and you have some expectation, or how does reciprocity happen in the
That
networking realm?
I'm laughing about that because I got a story. So my mom used to tell me that I gave away information and didn't get anything in return.
Mm,
She said, "You always helping people. You're always telling people things, and you don't get paid for that." And I would always say, "Well, I don't. I mean, I just want to help people, and I just want to share information." Little did I know that I was planting seeds.
right.
Now, I didn't know it was going to take, some of those seeds took a long time to, harvest, right?
Right.
But I definitely remember my mom telling me that she thought that I was giving away too much information. And I can honestly say that as part of my networking journey, um, giving that the law of reciprocity has definitely helped. But like I said, I like to put it in that format of a planting seeds, because people can relate to. We've all know someone, a farmer we know, just from having a plant in our home and things, that typically, if you're planting a seed, you are looking for some type of harvest. Now I can be more intentional about that, but you don't even have to think about it, because if you do it, that is the natural progression of when you plant something, you water it, you fertilize it, you give it sun, and then it grows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of your business in that way, then you're not gonna, you don't really have to, you just do it. It's not like, I don't want to say it's not intentional, but it's just a way of life if you do it correctly.
And what have you? Because you told me of a couple of stories where, and I love uh, some of the people that you hang out with, like a Jerry Green,
Mm-hmm.
who feeds constantly calls me and say, "Hey, have you thought about this?"
Mm-hmm.
And because this person could use this service, or I'm going to refer this person to this person as connectors. So this whole notion of reciprocity, you had a thing around connections, right? And
Mm-hmm.
being the connector. Um, can you recall any stories where you planted the seed and even years later or months later something came back to you that you weren't expecting?
Oh gosh, the interesting thing about that is that there are so many of those stories.
Right.
I I uh, there that has become a way of life, almost to the point
Really
that, yeah, I would really have to sit and think about it, because it's a part of my life right now. Like, it happens so regularly that it's like, I don't even look at it like, it's abnormal or anything out of the way, because I have an expectation that it happens like that.
right. It's
So,
that's so very interesting to me because it's almost like it's so second nature. So it's like does a lion hunt? Right? I mean, it's second nature. They don't even know that any longer that that's what they're doing because that's part of their DNA. They don't. That's just part of who they and so they don't even acknowledge the hunt per se because that's just part of what they do on a daily basis or every week basis, right? And
wow,
so,
Curtis, that's excellent. You could literally, just the fact that you brought that up that way, there's what do they say? Does a bird just flies? You don't think about flying, he just flies, right?
right, right,
And I'm doing a podcast this week with a young man that I spoke to maybe 3 years ago. So, maybe about 3 years ago, I might have spoke to this young man, and he now wants me to do a podcast. We happen to be in the same industry. I don't think we were in the same industry at the time, but so he contacted me to speak on the podcast. And so again, when I spoke to him 3 years ago, one of the things he said was that I was the mother he never had.
hmm,
But I never even talked to him but one time. And so whatever seed I planted has now grown to where now he's having me on a show that he has. like I said, it just happens so much, so naturally that I don't even think about it. It's almost like I could say, oh, let's say I give a referral or I refer, it's almost like that referral is a seed,
Hmm.
like it dropped when I gave it to them, and then it's going to show up in a harvest somewhere based on that. Not think, I don't even think about it. I just think it all comes back in some way, shape, or form. The law, the circle of life, right?
Right.
It all comes back.
It's sort of what you have is a reciprocity mindset, and it's shifted to the subconscious where you don't even it's not even acknowledged because it's just part of what you do.
Yeah, that's 100%. Um, yeah, and to even think of it like you're asking me to right now is that's a good analogy you use with the lion. That you would say they'd be like you talking to him and say, "Do you remember the hunt that you did like 4 years ago?" And he's like, "What? Like
Mm,
I hunt all the time. What do you mean? Like I
yeah, this is my
yeah."
DNA. This is who I am. I mean, I what are you talking about?
And it always comes back. I mean, wow, it always, I have to sit and really think about it.
And that's the really interesting aspect of this. And I know we're hitting on this, but I think this is huge. Storytelling and reciprocity, I think, is huge. The interesting aspect about reciprocity is that you said, I have to think about it, which means you don't think about it. You
Mm-mm.
don't think about it. It's not something that occupies any space. It's just something that's done. It's just
Mhm.
something that's action is taken. And you, but there's something deeper than that. I think you have to have a mindset, or at least um, a thought process that says, I'm always in the mode of seeing if I can help people.
Mm. That is wow. That's I was listening to a I'm a big Mark Manson fan from The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, and I was listening to one of his guests on his podcast today, and it was, I think it was called "Why Everyone's Social Skills Are
First
Getting
off,
Worse"
if you haven't made
by
money with AI yet,
Uh, Dr. David Brooks.
Okay.
Okay, why everyone's social skills are getting worse. To your point, let me just say, um, you said it sounds like it's just something that you just do. And he's saying, Dr. Brooks, is that art has been diminished, has been going away because people are always thinking that they can't trust other people because of social media and because of the way social media is used. People are showing less regard for other people, less regard for community. So yeah, it's natural for me, but it would be interesting to see how that translates over to this newer generation.
Right. It's just fascinating to me. So conversations that connect, storytelling, reciprocity, active engagement, opening up or having open-ended questions, which also shows that you care about the person, and then obviously building rapport.
Mm-hmm.
Nonverbals, nonverbals. This becomes very interesting. The power of body language and the power of maintaining eye contact, uh, and our old favorite matching and or mirroring and matching. Talk a little bit about your aspect of how you handle nonverbals. Why is it important to you or not important to you? How do you handle that?
It's very important.
Okay.
In college I took body language. That was a class, or either it was part of a class, uh, reading body language, and they're like cues, like you
Hmm.
said, they're cues to what's going on with that person. Um, are they engaged? They always say crossing your arms means you're not really open,
Right.
right? But it's so funny because my granddaughter does that now when she doesn't want to do something. She crosses her arms. I don't want to take a bath. So I think that's what she does. For some reason, that's the first thing she does when she wants to tell you no, is she crosses her arms. I don't want to. Okay. All right. So adults, obviously, that's kind of the same thing. Are they looking away? Are they not smiling? Um, it tells you whether or not they're engaged in the conversation with you. So I pay very close attention to body language and to see, to kind of adjust perhaps what I'm saying to them, to see if I can get a glimmer to change that. But that's also is to be very perceptive of people.
Hmm.
And it's just interesting to see um, how many people are paying attention to those things, because they can tell you a lot. If you're in the business world, very important that you pay attention. I think it's important in life to know it's almost like how people say to read people.
Hmm.
It's a different terminology than read people. No, to read, actually to pay attention to the other person, which is everything that you're talking about in this, is how we are paying attention to that person.
Right. So I find that it is fascinating when you don't have the physical to look at. So
Mm.
I'm gonna go back and I'll touch on an experience that you had for several years where you ran a call center
Mhm.
and you had to get rapport, but you can't see that person. And so there was a class that I believe I took or heard from Tony Robbins, a special class, this is years and years ago, where you're just on the phone and you do this exercise where both of you are on the phone back to back, or you're across the hall or something, and the person is just talking to you, and you're
Mhm.
trying to figure out, is the person slumped over? Are they having a sound like they're having a bad day? What's the body language of that person through their voice and tonality?
Mhm. Mhm.
Talk a little bit about your experience as it relates to you ran a 100, 200 person or close to a couple hundred people call center at
Mhm.
one point, and there was no you didn't get in front of people. How do you handle it when it's non-visual
Listening skills.
listening?
Yeah, listening skills. Uh, tone. Mm, uh, pitch.
Pitch.
Are they short with you? Um, you can tell, like you can literally tell if someone's having a bad day
Hmm.
from the inflection of their responses. And you could tell if they're in a hurry. You could tell if this is a genuinely happy person most of the time. There's a lot of paying attention to that. I think it could be a lost art.
Yeah.
Um, very in hmm, I mean, I haven't done enough research on this, obviously, to say if people are just more self-absorbed or do they, because I get a lot of telemarketing calls. I answer every call. I think I brought that up before. I answer my phone. Every call that I get, I answer. And I'm paying attention to that. Now, I don't give a lot of people telemarketing a chance, but I think I have a few of them, and it has a lot to do with how they interacted with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, for example, I can recall telling a person, hey, you know what, I have to go. I've got to get onto a meeting, and they just kept talking. I have to go. I have a meeting. We can pick this up, and they keep talking like I didn't say a word.
Right.
And that, if I think about it, you got to make that other person feel valued. I heard someone say this the other day, and I think it's been said quite a bit. People just want to be heard, seen, know that you have a genuine concern. And so if you don't do that, why would I want to do business with you? For what reason? If you're just trying to sell me something, I mean, there's dozens of people selling the same thing. Why would I do that with you?
Right.
And so if people are on the phone and they're just dialing for dollars, I get it, but I'm not going to be one of those people that participate. I don't need what you have bad enough to not build some type of relationship, even if it's just for that particular sale. I want to feel valued. I want to feel like you heard me. I want to feel like you really are engaged in this conversation. And if you're not doing any of that, I don't have any reason to talk to you.
Right. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Consistency with verbal messages.
Mm-hmm.
We talk all the time to people on the telephone. We talk, obviously to people in person. How important is it to be consistent with your verbal messages?
Extremely. Because that shows integrity. If you're consistent with what it is that you're saying and in that conversation, again, I talked a little earlier about a script. If you are consistent with what it is that you're saying and the message that you're putting out there, you don't even have to think about it if you're consistent with verbal messages that are accurate and true. I'm always bringing up something that I recall, which is, makes of one of the library of the things that pertain to me networking well. And I do remember Judge Judy saying once that if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory.
Right.
You don't have to remember a lot. You got to remember a lie. But you don't have to, if you're being authentic and you are consistent, the story doesn't change, right?
That's right.
No reason for it to change because it's the truth.
That's absolutely right. So nonverbals are huge in both whether you're in sight and physically present and not present. So let's just talk about, before we leave this, let's talk about some of the nonverbals in terms of, I'm on the telephone with someone. What's the best presentation nonverbally that I can make? What are some of the physical things that I can do to give off a positive type of energy?
When I would have to say it would be your tone, your inflection, that you can hear joy or happiness or sincerity. Those are things that can come across on the phone. You can build rapport without having to be there physically, because you can hear something that they're saying. Like, for example, you say, "Are you having a good day today? How's your Monday going so far?" And sometimes those people will, talk about that. Well, I was hoping I didn't have to come into work today, but I'm here. You just have to really listen for an opening that allows you to address what they're saying and give them an opportunity to speak more about it, because people really do love speaking about themselves, and they also love that it appears or sounds like you have a genuine concern for how they're doing.
Right. Right. So that was a question that I was going to ask earlier as it relates to acknowledgement. Do you
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge? So I was talking to one of our mutual friends today, and he was a little down, and
Mm-hmm.
so I said to him, sounds like you are distracted. You sounds like you're a little down. He was like, no, no, I'm okay, I'm okay. And as the conversation went on, an hour later, he said, that this happened, and that could be the reason why you felt that I was down, because I'm a little irritated at blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, boom. It, I acknowledged,
Mm-hmm.
that what he was feeding back to me non-verbally, sort of
Mm-hmm.
in the tone and his demeanor, and we're at least 1,000 miles, probably closer to 2,000 miles away from each other. So is it important? Have you found that it's important to acknowledge where they are?
Absolutely. In fact, that the fact that you did that is exactly what we're talking about, because you heard something in that person's voice. And sometimes you can't even, if you get good at this, you will just naturally hear it. Now, it might be somebody you know, and so if it's someone you know, you can just tell.
Mm-hmm.
You can, it almost, how people talk about that they're empaths? You
Yep.
know the term empath, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Well, perhaps not necessarily that, because first of all, people use that word out of, it's not what people really think. You can have empathy, but there's like a 1% or less than 1% of people that are actually empaths. Just so, two different things. Oh, that's a whole nother subject. However, when you're talking to people and you can hear, if you have a genuine concern, if you genuinely are paying attention, and this is part of your craft, like learning to network effectively is a craft, and you can hear something that says, and you and I've had conversations, and you go, "You all right?"
Mm-hmm.
Because
We
it's
do that
just,
to each other. Yep.
huh?
We do that to each other all the time.
Right. Are you okay? Person could say, "Yeah, I'm fine," but
But
right, because it depends on how you say, "Yeah, I'm fine," or you say, "Yeah, I'm good." Well, how did they say, "Yeah, I'm good"? Did
Yeah.
they say, and you just know, or someone can say, I think we've done this before too. "Oh no, I was just rushing in. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. There's nothing. No, trust me, I'm good." Right? So it just really depends on your ability to pay attention to the signs, and to also have empathy. And there's so many things that make for a good person, that you don't have to be physically there to hear what a person is saying, to also to hear when they're in pain. I don't know much about how you remember the suicide hotline?
Mm-hmm.
Or even, I would think, people on dispatch. I think you have to be a special kind of person. I would think they have to have that skill set, because it could mean life or death for somebody if you don't.
Right. And
Uh,
that brings up a very good point around reps.
mm,
You in I would imagine that those professionals, even if they don't go live, they get a lot of reps in listening to people's voices,
mhm,
because
mhm.
they need to have discernment.
Oh, good word. Great word. Yeah. Um, yeah. This is really making me realize how valuable that skill is, because this is a people business. Networking is a people business. And I would think that the people that do the best at this show a genuine concern for other people. And that's really what you're doing in networking and listening to people, is you have a genuine concern with what's going on with them. And so I hope we are using our ears as much as we use our mouth, because there's a lot of things that you can hear if you just turn on listening, actively listening, as you said earlier.
Right, exactly. This is excellent. Okay. So your personal brand, you know, so it becomes very interesting. Let me preface this by saying that your personal brand is so very important, and then it's not.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, initially crafting your personal brand and having, from a networking perspective, is very, very important. But as you are growing your business, you are growing your renewable energy corporation. As you are growing that, the personal brand is the corporation, literally, many times. But you got to step away from that. But you still got to build your personal brand. You got to identify what's unique about Robin. What is so? So talk a little bit about. Let's start with, persons just starting, or they're in your organization, they're in somebody else's organization, building a personal brand. Why is that so important?
Because that it's like your signature, your calling card, who and what you represent. When people see you, it's what they think of.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of different people might see that somebody's personal brand different depending upon that particular person, but it's important that you establish it yourself. What do you want that to be when people see you? What do you want them to think of? And then behind that, something you and I spoke about earlier is why.
The why.
Why is this your personal brand? Why is this important to you? Because if you can identify that, then you just do it. You don't have to think about it. It becomes natural to you, because that's a part of what you do and what you stand for also.
That's a great way of putting it. It's what you stand for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who you are and what you stand for. What about, and so what you stand for also leads into your unique value that you bring to the world, right?
Right, right. For me, over the years, that unique value has stayed the same, and that is that being a connector, but also being very, how do I say, very direct and truthful, honest. I've had people say, well, if you want to know the truth, just go ask Robin. She'll tell you. And so from that, building out from there, what you're going to stand for, what you're not going to stand for, what you're going to speak up for, has allowed that to build into specific brands.
Mm-hmm.
People knowing, or people coming and saying, oh, I'm going to ask Robin. I don't know where to start. Let me ask Robin. Because she probably knows somebody who she can refer me to that can help in that area.
Right. Right.
So that's the unique value I've been able to bring in that. And you just kind of got to look at it like, okay, what is it that I stand for? When people When people think about me, what do they think about? I had somebody say to me the other day something that they respected in me was my tenacity.
Wow.
I thought that was huge. That
That
I,
is the validation of the authenticity in your brand.
yeah, yeah. And I thought, and I've actually heard that said several times without necessarily thinking it that I wish I had your tenacity.
So, how does a person create a personal brand? How do you, what advice would you give someone in crafting their personal brand, understanding that that personal brand represents you whether you are present or not?
Hmm. And I think it doesn't attach necessarily to a company or a thing. I
Right.
mean, some people do that really well, like they attach it to uh, some type of business. But I don't know that that tells us who you really are. Like, who are you? Because you can, I've changed careers quite a few times, but the core, so maybe what we're talking about are the core values.
Hmm.
What is it that people know about you based on you? Not based on, you could sell whatever. I have sold whatever, from insurance to solar, completely different types of things. But what is it that people think about when they think about you? Um, that is that is really the core of who you are, and that's what I think you have to establish first.
Yeah, because that becomes very interesting. Because when I first met you years ago, um, I didn't know what you actually did. You were the leader for a networking group, prospecting and networking link panel,
Mm-hmm.
and because you were just a connector to me, I had no idea and still didn't know probably for several months what you actually did, other than I thought you were making money through being a connector, like panel. And I'm sure that there was some fee, but like I thought that was the main source of income,
Uh,
but it wasn't. I mean, but you were known for making connections. If you don't know something, ask Robin.
yeah, that's so funny you said that because I didn't even know that's what I was doing. Um, which is, um, kind of what brings us together with what we're doing here is because um, sometimes, often, we need someone to diagnose what it is that we're doing. Someone from the outside looking in that can say, when I see you, this is what I see. And I think there's power in that because back then I had no idea what I was doing, but it was actually natural for me. But because you can't quantify it with anything, it gets sometimes lost in the sauce, like they say.
Right,
Like, remember, my mom was saying, but you're doing this and you're not making any money.
right,
Okay, so how nowadays you can look at things and say, well, how do I monetize that? That's why I think young people are missing an opportunity to just be themselves, and maybe some of them are. I don't know if it's if they're authentically being themselves or if they're just doing it for the gram. I don't know, but I think learning how to without thinking about it. You brought this up several times. If I do something so well without even thinking about it, that's where my personal brand lies.
right.
I'm not even thinking about it. It is just who I am. And that's where I think a lot of people are missing this opportunity, and maybe where it's gotten away from us, is because, is that really who you are, or are you doing it for likes and giggles? So I didn't know. Yeah, that's so funny, Curtis, that you say I didn't know what she did or what Robin did, but we all knew who she was.
Yeah,
but we
absolutely.
didn't know what she did. And I've mastered it now. Now here I am, however many years later, and I've absolutely mastered it to where I know how to make it. Oh, I know how to make that talent last forever. That gift. It's actually a gift.
It certainly is a gift that has been honed over the many years, for sure.
Mhm.
All right. So, crafting your brand, networking scripts. So you touched on a little bit of the script, and yours is to the point where it's you know ingrained, and you're probably not using some you know
Mhm.
well, hold on a second, let me read what this says here. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to say, you're not doing that. But how important is it to have some structure in what you are saying, the follow up, connecting, just a whole system that allows for communication.
Well, getting back to the previous conversations we had, if it's something that I really believe in, that I'm authentic to, you'll be able to speak about it naturally,
Hmm.
uh, because it comes from a different place. Now, I was taught, we were given a script, but we were told to make it your own, because I don't talk like that, or I don't speak like that script.
Right.
But I get what it's that, like there might be important parts it's telling me that it wants me to make sure I stay on topic. Um, but I think you have to, even if you get a script, you're going to have to put that in your own words. Please don't read it verbatim. Do you talk like that? And because if you're just reading a script, and so I'll give you an example. Somebody's reading a script, and that's the only way they know how to do something. They won't even hear what another person says because it takes them off script.
Right. Right. Exactly. That was the example that you had earlier, where you're telling the person, listen, I have a meeting that I have to go to, and
Mhm.
they're still talking.
Right.
They're not listening because if they went off script, they wouldn't have any other idea where they are and what to do. I
Yeah.
mean, and so they haven't naturally incorporated it into them. They don't care enough
Mhm.
to practice it 50 times such that now it's natural, and I can now add lib, because and maneuver and adapt to kind of what's going on in the conversation. I don't care enough to practice it in order to be that proficient.
Bingo. And a part that falls in here too is relatable. Okay, look, you're a person. I'm a person. How would I relate to something might be different than how you would relate to it, but overall, I had a restaurant once in one of my careers, and we had a young lady working for us, and I said, well, how would you feel about that? And she was one of the cooks in the back, and she said, well, I've never worked at a restaurant before. I said, yeah, but you've eaten at one before, haven't you?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, uh, that's relatable. You, how, I was just literally dumbfounded when that was her response, because you may not have worked at one, but you've eaten at one,
Right. 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 You opened your mouth. Right.
right?
Exactly.
So how do you like to be treated when you go to a restaurant? And I think that's a big part of what people don't think about either. How would you feel if you were on the phone and you said you had to go and I just kept talking?
Mm-hmm.
And how would that make you feel? And so this is not rocket science. It really isn't. It's not rocket science. It is, how would you feel if that happened to you? How would that, going to the doctor? I remember my mom changed doctors because the one doctor's bedside manner was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So she changed to one who had a better bedside manner, because he probably was thinking, well, this is how I would feel if the roles were reversed.
Right. The whole notion of authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now
Mm-hmm.
you and you can say the same word. So you get calls, or you make a call to a customer service, and they've incorporated the whole notion of empathy. I understand exactly how you feel, sir. That would, and it's a script.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But some people, I had a young lady say what they had made a banking mistake, and she said, "Wow, that would really piss me off as well."
Mm-hmm.
That was really authentic.
Mm-hmm.
You could, there's a human there as opposed to a humanoid who's saying, "Yeah, that would piss me off as well." Okay, what does the script say? I'm
Exactly.
supposed to say to you.
Well, I saw someone talking about they were going to be using AI for calls,
Hmm.
and I start laughing because I said, there's no way that it's going to know how to communicate with me, because unless it can listen to cues, and you're not going to tell me AI is that smart. It can answer a question. I get it. It can answer the question. But it cannot feel,
No.
right? It can't feel. It can't say what this lady said. It can't say, well, that would piss me off too.
Hmm.
It can say, I'm sorry, but I can tell when it's inauthentic. And again, maybe this generation is immune to those things. I don't know. We're going to see. I don't know. Um, but typically, as you get older, you care more about those things.
That's absolutely right. And I'm going to make a little asterisk
Hmm.
and just say that if someone is listening to this a year from now or 2 years from now, because this is evergreen meaning this is this is not time sensitive. You are not learning lessons that are like time sensitive. You got to utilize this right now or 10 years from now. These are laws and formulas that are just as applicable in the 70s as they were in the 80s, in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and the 2030s. Okay,
Mm.
so let me say that this is evergreen. Having said that, I want to just say that they are starting now to train the models, the AI models. Again, this is an asterisk, this is off script. They are training the models to have more than just the text. So they're training on audio, they're now training on video, and they're training on pictures, such that when they get audio and video and they're training it and they get enough computing power is not there yet, but when they get enough computing power, they have what is called artificially intelligent artificial intelligence, or general intelligence, I should say,
Hmm.
AGI, where when they put all that information in, the computer or the AI agent will understand the nuances of, I'm ordering a hamburger I want the bun upside down with the cheese on top of that, but I don't want the cheese melted, and I want the relish on the bottom, but the ketchup on the top. The AI would go, "What? What are you talking about?" Just like a kid would go in the line in the drive-through. What is uh, help on aisle 4? This person is nuts. The AI would be able to do that as well, but it's going to take a while. So just a note that they are trying to do that. They are trying to, because right now it'll go, "Hello, Robin," and you say hello, and it'll wait
Mhm. Mhm.
because there's latency, right? It'll wait, and then it gives it away right then and there. But
Right.
they're training us. You call your bank. It's you go through an AI before you go, and it really you just keep saying, "I want to speak to a representative. I want to speak to a representative." No, but before I put you to a representative, I want to speak to a representative, and you finally overload the system. Basically, that's what you have to do now to speak to a human. You have to
Mhm.
so it's classic. So um, anyway,
Uh-huh.
scripts, and last thing I want to just talk about because I know that you do this, or you, at least in the insurance industry, you did a lot of it in terms of handling common scenarios for people and helping them bridge the gap between where they are and where somebody else has done that was in there, just like them, and telling the story. And how do you handle like common scenarios?
Oh goodness. When you say common scenarios, tell me what you mean, Curtis. Common scenarios.
So a common scenario would be, John had this issue, and Jack, who you've already solved that problem, had that same issue, and so
Mhm.
it's a common scenario in which you need to relate what Jack's issue and everything was to John.
Mhm.
Basically, you're bridging the gap in terms of handling commonality and being able to explain it across the board, sort of.
So yeah, okay. So sharing, I would say you would in sharing that person is not alone.
Yes, yes,
Um, I absolutely understand. I've had several people who've had that challenge, and this is what I've done to support them with it. So you use that as an example to help that person feel like that they're not alone. They're not the only one with this problem, and that this is how we handled it for him. Let me know whether or not you think that that's a viable solution for you.
right.
So
That's
anytime you can show someone that because there's sometimes when you're dealing with something and you think, okay, is it me? Is it am I the only one having this problem? And so it always feels good to have somebody let you know you're not alone.
right. Exactly. In fact, there was in the probably in the last decade there was a sales guru that his first name was Ari. I forget his last name.
Mhm.
That he would his whole famous line was, anytime you had an objection, it was, "That's not a problem." Many times
Mm.
our blah 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 had this issue, your same issue, and they resolved it this way, exactly how you said, Robin. And
Right.
but he would start off, "That's not a problem.
Mhm. Mhm.
We've
Yeah.
seen this before, and here's how we solved it."
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That just makes people feel that if it makes them feel more at ease.
And they're not alone.
Exactly. That's the biggest part of it, is feeling like you're not alone in a situation uh, that someone else is being challenged perhaps with even the same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on from network scripting to one of my favorites, storytelling for impact. Love storytelling. I love storytelling. In fact, in a previous life, we brought in for our facilitators, our process improvement facilitators, we brought in like directors
Mm-hmm.
to help craft stories around machines, literally, and people interacting with machines, but help craft stories so we could connect emotionally. I know you love storytelling. How important is that for you?
Oh gosh, over your life, I think people can relate to a story if you craft it well. And crafting it well just means giving them a kind of a visual to see it, or someone that's important to you, like when you say, "Oh, my grandmother taught me this," or if it's someone, a celebrity, someone famous, then they
Hmm.
can. It's like they can see that person saying it. Um, a lot of people right now, I've noticed, are doing a lot of storytelling about Kobe Bryant,
Hmm.
and they have visuals of the the story that they're telling around him, which ironically, once he retired, he called himself a storyteller.
Right.
So it gives people an opportunity to just like close their eyes, and as they hear it, they can actually see the story. And it has a bigger impact because um, they can actually remember something or someone important in their life, you know, sharing certain things with them. I think it's a very impactful way to get messages across, and for those messages to stay ingrained in our head and use them as a teaching tool.
Right. One of the former Lakers was relating the story about Kobe's mentality, and he
Mm-hmm.
said that they had a game. They made it. It was a tough loss, and they're on a private jet, so they pull up to the runway, and he has his car. He's in his own private car. Blah blah blah, and he's like almost 2 hours late, right? And so he gets on the flight, and they start clapping like, "Golly, it's about time." And he sits down and he says really loudly, "Y'all lucky I even showed up," and didn't say nothing. Shut the whole plane down, basically. Y'all lucky I even showed up, and so the people, like you said, are continuously telling some wonderful stories about Kobe, because there's always great stories. But the point is, you can demonstrate connection, authenticity. You can clarify your message. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you use that quite a bit for inspiring. Talk about inspirational stories and how you utilize inspiration to spur action.
Um, I think especially of certain situations where people have been in where they uh, found a way out of a situation. Those are probably some of the most powerful. Where the I like I always like to see the person who no one expected, the underdog. I love stories of the underdog are some of the most inspiring stories that you can tell. Of course, especially if you have those stories yourself,
Hmm.
and because it gives people hope, or it inspires them to take action. If they hear of someone that's relatable, or if you give a story of someone that you know and that was in a really tough situation and how they were able to come out of it, it can inspire someone else to just keep going, just make it through another day. Um, and those stories, that for me, that sometimes those are the kind of stories. Those stories are the main thing that keep you going. And you have to have a certain mindset, though, to even be able to hear that, because a lot of times people are closed off. But if you really want to get inspiration, then you just have to put yourself in that person's place. It could be the worst of times, and somebody was able to find a way out of that. And so if you craft that story, again, being authentic, being honest, telling the truth, then that can really help people get out of a dark place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I guess you know one of the most interesting storytellers was Sophia on Golden Girls, and she would always start off with picture it, Sicily, 19 and whatever the year may be, and she'd tell a story, right? And sometimes it was on, sometimes it was not on message, but you know, one of she was literally famous for telling these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Stories are hugely powerful, and you can do them, like you said, for impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that was the last slide. This has actually been really, really refreshing.
I hope so. I hope that there's so much power in networking, so many pieces. The way you crafted this and put it all together, um, it's an art that I hope people really put the time and energy in to connect the dots, to connect the pieces of the puzzle together, because it can make your life so much, um, I want to say easier, but it can help it flow better. And there's so much of this all around. Um, it can be so, so powerful to what it is that you're doing if you just think about the other person first.
Right.
And then it's going to come together. It is, ah, it is one of the things that I actually love doing the most. It's, it can, it can open up new doors for you. It can get you into places that maybe you weren't able to get into before, because it isn't just enough anymore to, in some spaces, of course, yeah, to know certain people. But what if you don't know people? Then this is the perfect opportunity for you to build a network of people that will last you forever. You'll always be able to call on someone and to show benefit of that relationship.
Right. Exactly. I love it. I love it. So next week we're back here for a different networking topic, and we certainly look forward to it. Anything else, Robin, you want to say that to close this out?
I would say, here's a story. There was a young lady on Instagram, and she was, just talking about some challenges that she was having. And I went in and I just made a post and told her, I said, I think what you should do is spend some time with yourself and think this whole thing through. What is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? What is it that you want? And then come back once you've taken that time with yourself and try to figure it out. And there are about 1,000 people who thought that that was a great idea. So I think people are looking at how to do things in a different way, and what tools you already have in your tool belt, and just start looking at things in a different light. And I think that could help you use the information that we're giving you will work for you a lot better once you've taken that time to figure out what is it that what direction are you trying to go in, and for what reason and what purpose.
Absolutely. What's your why? All right, Robin. Well, thank you so very much for the time, and we will see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye
you.
now.